So if you're watching this replay, you can look below. I'll put a time index where the actual discussions start. I'm just waiting for people to log on. I just announced this live broadcast about 15 minutes ago. Told them 20 minutes, so yeah. So just be a little bit patient as people come online. So I've been starting up these live streams a little bit more often now, if you're watching in the replay. So I'll just wait for people to come online. Just waiting for people to come online. So it seems we've got a couple individuals. Hey, how are you? Haji. Yeah, let me know if you can hear me. Say I can hear you. If you can hear me clearly, I just want to be sure. Yeah. Yo, Moy, how are you? Mo, excuse me. I'm good. How are you? Hello, Hassan. Hello from Canada. Yeah. So I'm just waiting for a few more people to get on, and very cool. I heard Greece is beautiful. I have friends from there, and they love it. So have a good trip. Mo. I'm cool. How about you, Rob? Let me know if you guys can hear me or not. Just say we can hear you. Cool. So everybody can hear me. Fantastic. All right, good. Yeah, I ask that all the time because we had some problems with the software. It wasn't sending out audio at one time, and I didn't know until people started complaining. So I just want to double check. So we're just at 35. I'm waiting for a few people to jump in until I get into the subject of the day. Hello. Hey, cool. From Netherlands. Hello. I think it's interesting to hear from Iran. Oh, very cool. Hey, Sven, you're best. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Cool. So you're learning CSS. Good. Yeah, CSS is one of the trickier coding languages to learn. So just keep working on it. You'll get there. Cool, I appreciate that. Thanks, Cosmo. The quality dev. My day is pretty good. I did my daily walk. I'm now, I put on some COVID pounds, Got a little heavy, so I've been working on losing weight, getting back into shape, because when COVID hits, in March, my gym shut down, et cetera. So I'm getting back in. So I did my morning walk. I try to get in 10,000 steps a day. The easiest way to keep in shape is just to integrate habits of health into your lifestyle. Like go for a walk to get a coffee, that kind of stuff. Where's the big plant? The big plant shrank. Yeah, it's in the other room. I decided to not have it today, but I think I'm going to get another one of those big plants so I could just permanently put it here. It looks good. I am a student. Any thoughts on Python KiwiMD cross-platform framework? I never used it, cross-platform. I assume that is a client side. I don't know. I never used it, so I couldn't say. I'll answer a few questions until we get enough people on, then I'll get into the subject. Any tips if someone is starting on Upwork or Fiverr and don't know how to get your first client? Make sure you have a really good website. Hopefully you've done, maybe you haven't done any free, but you have a real good website. Make sure it's clean, well written, just good layout, good graphics, and just reach out to people and expect to do the first 1 or 2 projects for free just to get some skills. All right, let's see what we got here. I've been running the past few weeks. I got to get out of a coding chair, Yeah, exactly. Quality Dev is talking about putting on some weight because of COVID. I can't help, listen, I'm a little older than most of you guys, I can't help but stress that you have to develop, especially if you're younger, habits of health as you're young, so become habitual. And a huge one is just daily moderate exercise to keep your weight reasonable. If you're thinner and healthier, you have less pain, less anxieties, you'll be a better coder, life will be a lot better. So I would suggest really doing that. All right. Your IWD course is great, Stefan. I want to ask if that is enough to be a freelancer. I'm going to get the freelance course. With the IWD and my freelance course, you should be able to go out there and start doing freelance work. Know my philosophy. You learn really the big stuff as you actually do work. Get paid to learn, as I say. Which language should I learn first in web development track? Learn HTML5, then you learn your CSS3, then you learn JavaScript. You don't have to be an expert in each of these. You just have to be competent. And then from there you can decide which way you want to go, if you want to go back end. Well, you do. You could either continue with JavaScript and Node, you could maybe get into PHP. It depends on where ultimately you want to work. How we doing here? 73. Is it possible to get a job as a developer without a degree in the U.S. if you're from another country? Yeah, it is. Just look at my past streams. I talk all about that. Is Vue, React, or Angular better to learn as your first front-end framework? Let the job that you're looking to do dictate that. Technically, one of these may be better than another, but if there's no job, then what's the point? I think you get the most jobs in React, then Angular for very large corporations, and Vue for smaller. I like Vue. We use Vue on StudioWeb. What did you eat for breakfast? I did not have breakfast. I try to do a regular intermittent fasting. And the easiest intermittent fast is to have supper around 6 or 7, and then you skip breakfast, and then you have lunch. So I had lunch at 12. I skipped breakfast, and I had just a mixture of shrimp and chicken. Is the C language obsolete? Not at all, not even close. It's such an old language, but it's still used quite a bit. So if you learn C, you'll be fine. Is it easier for a designer to learn to code or a developer to learn design? That's a good question. The key is that whether you have a designer mind or the coder mind, it's not binary, meaning there is a continuum between that. So let's say this is designer, this is coder, designer, coder, and you fall somewhere on that spectrum, right? So you may be closer to designer, but you may be halfway between designer, reaching into developer. It depends on you. So it really depends. They both require a different type of mind. The great thing about development, though, you could be a real detailed, structure, organizational type of developer, very much leaning towards this side, or you could be more of a UX, UI developer, which is more artistic. So you just have to feel that out for yourself. I know one thing for sure. If you don't have that designer's eye, it's hard to develop. You have to be very disciplined in terms of following basic design principles like white space, alignment, font use, etc. I have problem with code blocks. There are some missed DLL files. Can you help me, please? I don't know what I should do. Is code blocks an application? Well, you're just going to have to DLL files. If you don't know, they're dynamic linked libraries. I think that's what it's short for. It's a Windows thing. It's basically a way that Microsoft allowed developers rather, to leverage the Windows architecture through something called DLL. It's been a long time since I did that kind of programming. So I've been learning Python now, and I know the syntax and methods in some library like math and NumPy, but I don't know when I am good enough to do stuff. What should I do to be able to do real stuff? I would look at maybe 1 or 2 little mini Python projects in an area in which you want to code. So if you want to do web, then try to do something small with Flask or Django. If you want to do, game develop, try to build a little game Like I teach how to build a simple game, a treasure hunt game, in my Python course as an example. At the end of the day, there is a point when you are learning to code. You have to take that leap where you have to say, okay, of course I don't know everything, and guess what? No developer does. But you have to take that leap and understand that if you have your fundamentals down, you understand, and well, we'll talk Python modules and method creation and how to organize your code properly, how to create control flow, how to create objects, etc., tuples, the basic structures, and how to string it all together. What you could do is, like, the reason I use a game teaching, as I have one of the chapters, you learn a little game with Python. It's a text-based game because it teaches you flow control. It teaches you how to organize code into proper little chunks, if you will, modules. And so it takes you there, because at the end of the day, all what you're doing in most applications is just creating, you have bunches of code organized into these neat packages, these packages called functions or methods, and then larger packages called modules in Python. And then you have this code manage the flow of information. Think of, a lot of times, just text information. So imagine this flow of information like a river, and you're just sort of channeling the liquid around. That's all it is. But you got to take that leap. Just go for it. BMW or Audi? I prefer Audi. I have an Audi. They're both nice cars. They're expensive to maintain. I think if you're into high-end cars, you're into that German automobile, the best built are still the Porsche, the 911s, because they haven't changed the basic car in years now, so they really refined it. As far as I understand, I said, going freelance forced by COVID mostly, got an offer from a company in India. It feels insecure because what? I got the answer very quickly. Well, just get paid up front and make sure you have a solid contract. Do you still think competitive programming is a gimmick? Yeah, it's like training wheels on a tricycle. You know, like a little tricycle, you got a little bike, and they put little training wheels. And, you know, it's not even that. Listen, if it motivates you for a week or two, then fine. But see, the difficulty in software development is not writing the code. It's conceiving of an app, solving a problem, understanding how the code all works together. From what I've seen in competitive coding, it doesn't do that. But I haven't looked at it much. I think you could I say just freelance. Just go freelance. That's how you're going to get better. All right, how are we doing? 139. So let me just jump into the subject now. It's been a while, 13 minutes, wow. And then we'll get back into some Q&A. It's going to be brief. There we go. So an article I found a little while back, 15 UX tips for great progressive web apps, whatever. That was not my point. Starbucks is known for its quirky marketing strategies, as well as being a great supporter of upcoming technology. So when they announced they had doubled their daily active users using progressive web apps, it got our attention. This goes back to something I've been talking about for a while. A couple years now or more. I remember I got into a bit of a spat with Swift programmers where I said Swift is going down. And basically what I was saying was that non-native implementations, writing mobile apps with PWAs or PhoneGap or maybe React Native, whatever the choice may be, was going to be more common, far more common than writing native, because there's too many advantages. One of the big advantages of writing non-native is that you write one code base and it works on all the platforms, well, Android and iOS. Whereas if you write native, of course, you got to write one for iOS, one for Android. A lot of work, double the cost. You got to get much more skilled. Whereas if you do something like a PWA, you just have one code base, for example. And the other advantage is that a lot of people don't want to install an app. PWA, allows you to get some really good user experience in mobile without the user having to install an app. So let me read a little bit of this, and then we'll get back to the Q&A. As we studied more about PWAs, we kept reading about stories of how they have made a huge impact on businesses. For instance, Housing.com, one of India's leading online real estate platforms, saw their rate reduced by a whopping, their bounce rate, reduced by a whopping 40% after they introduced PWA. Common Floor Group saw a 10% increase in the overall traffic and 2 times increase in the daily active users once they tried its hands on PWA. Uber designed its PWA to load fast, even on 2G networks, and it now takes less than 3 seconds to load the core app. Having been part of developing a few PWA ourselves, we at Salute Labs, I have nothing to do with them, but I'm going to give them credit because I'm reading the article. We at Salute Labs decided to write a comprehensive post on the state of PWAs in 2020, which you can find here. I'll try to put a link to this article in the description when this gets archived online, this YouTube video. Having been part, when a few people wrote in asking for best practices while developing PWAs, we decided to dig deeper and find out the nitty-gritty details that contribute to a success in PWAs. So without further ado, here are 15 UX tips that will help you build a great progressive web app. All right, so some of the, I don't know, I've never read this article before, I just read the headline, so this is the first time reading this, but let's jump into a few things. So, ooh, what happened there? No, hold on. Press the image. All right, here we go. Number 1, keep it simple, stupid kids. Again, something I've been preaching forever. You know, you want to have simple code. I keep pressing that image. You want to have simple code, etc. Okay, let's see. Ensure smooth navigation. Okay, well, you know, a PWA is expected to behave more like a mobile app from a UX point of view and a website from a technological point of view. Treat your approach to developing the PWA the same way you would while developing native apps. Yeah, you know, smooth navigation. One of the things I talk about in all development, I said, especially web apps, what's going to differentiate a successful web app or mobile app from a non-successful mobile app is how usable it is, how user-friendly it is. That's why UI and UX specialists are very, very, very important. All right. Use simple fonts. And again, people have been watching my vlogs know I've been talking about this. These are universal rules, right? Didn't need no research. This goes back to the 90s. Cross-platform functionality. One of the key advantages of PWA is the ability to enhance and polyfill a host of features when the browser lacks the ability to natively support them. Polyfill is just a nerd term for having code fallback methods, if you will. So if you try to implement some code that displays something and it might not work in all browsers, you have this way, this fallback method, so that the browser will still be able to display something close to, if not exactly what you wanted to show up in the first place. And when designing a PWA, it is important to be aware of each browser's capability, blah, blah, blah. It's all web stuff. Create an offline mode. Okay, here we go. This is something specific to PWA. Designing a PWA means making all the features available to users, whether you have a good internet connection or not. A study by Trivago, a leading hotel search engine, showed that once they implemented their PWA, evolved site, 67% of users whose connection was interrupted continue using the site once they came back online. The trick here is to replace the loading spinner with something relevant, like a small game that the user can play while waiting for the content to be loaded. Oh, there you go, there you go. Another trick is to keep users engaged in times of lost internet. Another great trick to keep users engaged in times of lost internet connection is the use of skeleton screens. Skeleton screens give a sneak peek to the users as to what to expect and guides them to the point of interest on the page. So we can go to that, make it discoverable. While, don't worry, I'm going to link to his articles if you want to read the whole thing. While designing PWAs, keep in mind that you should retain some of the features of a regular website, including making PWA discoverable and SEO friendly. So they go into detail here, but you got the works with any input type. Yeah, okay. So you want to support touch, etc. Make the PWA more accessible. Yes, that's the standard. Accessibility is basically making your website usable for people who may have certain disabilities. Load the performance improvements. Again, this is all web stuff, right? Use Google Lighthouse to validate your PWA. Oh, that's interesting. Google Lighthouse is an open source website auditing tool launched by Google in 2018. It uses a set of 5 parameters to rank a website on a scale of 0 to 100. PWA is one of the categories that Google Lighthouse uses to classify your website. Yeah, probably a good idea if Google puts out a tool like that. Use it. Avoid scrolling glitches. Okay, it's related to the previous thing. Be careful with push notifications. Oh, that's one of my pet peeves. Push notifications were initially envisaged as a method to keep our end customers up to date with our latest content features. But as the developers and website owners got greedy, and more websites started asking users permission to send them push notifications, making them annoying. Yeah, I don't like push too much. Don't be obnoxious about asking for email addresses or sending push notifications. Don't be obnoxious with users. It's like a first date. You gotta stay calm there. Aim for better UI. Okay, reduce friction. Again, that's about usability. Don't overwhelm users. Again, yeah, cognitive load. So these are all old school. Those are all old school principles that we've been known for a long time now in the web space. But the point I want you guys to take away from this is seeing how PWA not only has some technological advantages, one code base. Number 2, it has some marketing advantages in that people are much more likely, according to some big players, much more likely to use the PWA over a native solution. There you go. That's pretty much it for that. So let's get into a few questions. I'm going to be ending this in about 7 minutes, half an hour. It's a beautiful day outside, and I want to enjoy my Sunday. Let's scroll down. Here. Social life when coding all day alone. Well, you got to give yourself breaks. You have to step out, go to a gym, do your walking every day. You want to stay healthy. That's another part of staying healthy. You got to have a balanced life, because you may be able to code like a maniac for a year or two, where you're constantly coding. Who knows? Maybe longer. Who knows? But what happens then? You might reach burnout. And if you hit burnout, then it's like a deep hole to get yourself out of. So you better to moderate your coding endeavors and your business endeavors, etc., and moderate it with social activities, exercise, etc. Don't get too OCD about something. You know what I mean? What do you think about headless CMS in real world for freelancers? WordPress plus Gatsby.js. I couldn't say. I think that's a Need2Nerd technology, and see where the demand is. DG Nomad, what advice would you give yourself if you had to do it over? Well, I'm giving you a lot of that advice. You know, some things I got right, some things I got wrong. One of the things is the balanced lifestyle. The balanced lifestyle is very, very, very important. Also understand when you're younger, when I say young, you're teens or 20s, one thing you have is a lot of not everybody, but a lot of people have confidence, or they tend to get too passionate about their what they think is correct. And one thing you have to come away with when you're younger is that you still have a lot to learn, and you may perceive something as being accurate when you're young, and you may find that it's not accurate as you get older. So take everything that you believe with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean be self-doubting, have confidence, but also question yourself and look to validate your ideas from different sources of information, even especially contradictory. At the end of the day, what's more important is finding out the truth, what's accurate, as opposed to being right. And if you do that, you'll serve yourself very, very, very well. Yeah, no, I think, I don't know, it's, I don't have any regrets. I don't think so. It's some things I wish, I think this is what I regret. I always tell people this, and this is true. I regret nothing I've done, even my failures, but I regret things that I did not do. So do. You know, don't do crazy things, you know, but assess something and try it, you know, see what happens, you know, especially when you're young. What else is there? How can you compare a library to a Python to a language? Yeah, I didn't catch what was going on there. Would it be a problem for me to learn PHP after I master WordPress development? You cannot master WordPress development without knowing PHP, because WordPress is created with PHP. What are your thoughts on blockchain development? Niche. When it was all hot, when everybody was hot and heavy for blockchain, 3 years ago? You go look at my videos, I was telling people it's going to be niche. It's not going to take over the world. And it didn't, and it won't. Blockchain is a type of database in its simplest way of explaining it. It has its purposes, it's interesting technology, but it's not like this game changer. Didn't happen, right? 3 years didn't happen. It's a niche technology. It's good. Just let the market decide whether or not you pursue that, besides what you like to do. What about e-learning? Moodle is still around, but I find it really obsolete. Any new e-learning platform? I don't know. StudioWeb is an e-learning platform. We developed it from scratch, working with schools since about 2010, 2011. Yeah, we looked at Moodle years and years ago. You know, there's other platforms, you know. I don't know all of them out there. Can you learn computer science math online? Why not? Let's see. Which is the most popular back-end tech stack in your city, Montreal, and the rest of Quebec? You know, I don't know. I don't know. In all honesty, I don't know. I would have to look at that. We do our thing. When we rewrote StudioWeb, I could have chose any stack. And I still decided to go with PHP Laravel because of a bunch of reasons I've discussed. Maybe I'll do a video on that. But it could have been built in any stack. In terms of jobs, you know, I don't know. I haven't looked. I don't. I'm not a guy who works for other people, so I don't look at that. Just look at the Indeed.com job listings. That will give you an idea. Where should you look online for freelance opportunities? I talked about that in several videos. You can do local businesses. Just go to Google Maps, talk to local restaurants, local coffee shops, small gyms, etc. You can start there. You can go online with freelance.com perhaps. There's a lot of different places. Just start looking around. I think I answered this. Would it be a problem to learn vanilla PHP after I mastered? Well, you can master the front end of WordPress, and then if you want to get into building WordPress plugins and maybe theme building, it'd be a lot easier if you know PHP. All right. Is it worth spend time to learn dynamic programming? It only depends. If are you working now? Are there job opportunities that look good to you in that? In terms of technical, no, because the more languages you learn, the more frameworks you work with over time, the better developer you're going to be. I am a pretty fresh web developer, still training, mostly write JavaScript, PHP, Python. When it comes to web design, I don't know how to start or even if I should. Yeah, you know how to write code, but you're not writing development. That's a lot of the code courses out there. They teach code, sort of, but they don't teach development. You gotta learn development. And that's because all this code doesn't exist in a vacuum. The code operates within a context. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript, typically in the web browser. You have to understand the web browser. You have to understand HTTP, request response cycle, server client model. You have to understand how information moves around. That's request response, etc. When you understand that stuff, then you can take your HTML and your CSS and your JavaScript code and put it to use. But if you don't understand that stuff, then you're kind of like, it's like having a remote control without a game system. You need a game system, right? That's why I teach all that kind of stuff in my courses. So my foundation courses, et cetera, CSS, HTML, JavaScript, Python, PHP, they teach a lot more. They teach that infrastructure. And that's why people are surprised about how much they learn. Because I'm not just teaching the code. All right, how are we doing here? Ooh, 30 minutes. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. I would want to focus on side projects. Would you do a CS degree and learn business by yourself, or a business degree and CS by yourself? Oh, now if the degrees are free or in Europe, I would lean towards a CS degree, because a technical degree is going to be worth more than a business degree, that's for sure. What do you think about low-code platforms like OutSystems? There are a lot of companies jumping on that wagon, and I see more and more job offers for OutSystem devs here in Europe. Well, if there are job opportunities and you've tried it and it's a type of development that you like, then go for it. Is it better to start a digital agency or start freelance under your own name? What do you mean? You're talking about just creating a name for your company versus just using your own name? If that's what it is, it comes down to marketing. I don't think it really matters too much. Or are you talking about just doing your own freelancing, doing the work yourself, or looking to hire developers who would work for your freelance company? Well, if that's the question, I don't know if that is, but if that's the question, I would start for yourself, start developing your business, start developing your client base. But what you're going to find, though, when you start freelancing and when you start hiring people, what I found, and many people I know, few people I know who took their freelance business and expanded into a full development house, before you will make the same money as you did as a freelancer having people work for you in development, it's going to take 10 people working for you full time, approximately. So remember that. So when you start expanding your freelance business, start hiring people, especially full time, there's going to be a lag time between the time you start hiring your second, your third, your fourth, and your fifth employee, etc. You're going to have to get to about 10 employees before you're making the same money as you did alone as a freelancer. And the larger consideration, well, that's a pretty big one. The second big consideration is that your role, R-O-L-E, your role in your work life will change drastically. You will become a manager of people. You will become a manager of the business, and you won't be touching code much if you have success, because you won't have time to touch the code. So recognize that if you start hiring people to work under you, where you pay them, you will become more and more detached from the coding, which could be fine. It could be exactly what you want to do. I don't know. Keep that in mind. So for example, at StudioWeb, I architected it. I do code inspections on occasion. I don't have to anymore because my lead developer is really good, and I'm involved with the UI UX. I give it outline what I want, the color scheme, where I want things positioned, and the people I work with know me very well, and so they're able to I don't have to micromanage them, but I cannot build the application in terms of its functionality, in terms of ultimately what it does, and I cannot build the business and be the coder at the same time. Can't be done. So I made the decision a long time ago that I was not going to be a developer, and at that point I was going to be manager, architectural, etc. So keep that in mind as well when you're looking at freelance versus freelance agency. All right. I'll leave it with this. Yes. I just like it. All right. So with the honking of that horn, now my window's open. I will let you guys go. I hope you enjoyed this live stream, and I will see you in the next one. I'm not sure how often it's going to be. Maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. I've done a couple recently. I just had a vibe. But if you want to get more live streams, I do Zoom meetings, we do personal Zoom meetings in my mentoring program. There's a lot more attention to detail to everybody there because it's a smaller group. All right, we'll talk soon.